We are very pleased to welcome our state's governor today. Jay Nixon is the 55th governor of Missouri and was re-elected last November in his second term. Governor Nixon grew up in a family where public service was highly valued. His father was the mayor and a city judge in the town he grew up in, just south of St. Louis. And the governor's mother was the first woman to become president of the local school board. The governor has other strong connections to public education in Missouri as well. The First Lady, Georgianne Nixon, has taught in Jefferson City School District, and her father, the late Hubert Wheeler, was Missouri's first commissioner of education. Governor Nixon has made education a priority for his administration, providing record funding for our K-12 classrooms, even during difficult budget years. He has increased funding for training programs in Missouri's colleges and universities for in-demand fields such as healthcare, and is working with higher education institutions to keep college affordable. We appreciate the governor taking time from his busy schedule today to be with us, so please join me in giving a warm welcome to our state's 55th governor, Jay Nixon.
Good morning. It is really good to be here for a couple of reasons. This has been a busy week. I've been in New York where we had had to meet with all the credit rating agencies, and it's always wonderful at my age and years of experience to walk into a room in New York City at Moody's or Fitch or Standard & Poor's and be cross-examined brutally by 24-year-olds with brand new suspenders. But the reason we do that regularly, and the reason we're going to continue to do that, is with our stellar triple credit rating. And we're moving forward on a couple of bond matters this year. As most of you know, some higher education repair and maintenance projects that have been on the back burner too long are going to get some attention, as well as a few other things like the state capitol, which is leaning, and we like our capitals flat. It's always heartwarming to go to those meetings. The cross-examinations begin, and by the time you're about halfway through them, they say, oh, this is Missouri. You all know how to operate with money. Your word means something, and it's a long-term value of your state to be open and transparent about how you do that. And quite frankly, the last of the meetings, they said they wanted to talk about other things because, of course, we're going to remain AAA credit rated, and it's a very good piece. The other reason I went, and it's something that some of you may interact with Linda Lubering retiring on August 6th, a significant loss, not a significant loss for her, but Dan Hogg will be the new budget director. Some of you may know Dan. He's an economist who worked in Linda's shop for a period of time, then went to the Senate, became Senate budget director, served in that position for a number of years, then came over to the Department of Mental Health, where for the last few years he's been operating both the budget and some other matters there. Dan will continue that professional expertise that Linda Lubering brought. And I did discover with Linda, one of the limitations of powers of a governor, because when Linda came in and indicated that she was going to retire, I specifically told the Chief of Staff and the Council that I was not going to accept her retirement, and consequently she wouldn't leave. But apparently people have rights to do that if they want to. So absent a gubernatorial order, she is over the top of it and is going to be moving on. But I know each of you have had an opportunity to either hear her speak or work with her. Dan will carry on that tradition of the budget office being a very transparent, nonpartisan, open place where information is going to be available, and I'm just excited by that. The only difference between the two of them, I mean, Linda's Linda. She's a superstar. But Dan is 6'8". And so we've added another almost 15 inches to the budget office, but great experience. So I want to thank each of you, first of all, before I get started here, for what you do each and every day. And I mean that sincerely. You have tough and demanding jobs that the public watches all you do, and you're delivering for our state. Public school educators, administrators, and board members have answered the very highest of callings. And on behalf of 6 million Missourians, I want to start my remarks here today by thanking you for your commitment. That commitment also goes to our State Board of Education and our great new commissioner, Margie and her team at DESE putting this on and doing many other things. The State Board for demanding excellence and being involved. I think we've got a group at the State Board right now that brings a wealth of experience, a depth of commitment, and a rational way to work on challenging issues. I'm very proud as I look out here of the folks that are at your State Board and at DESE and the work they're doing. Today, I'm proud to report that our schools are making meaningful and measurable improvement thanks to the people in this room all across our state who are united in an unwavering belief in the value of public education. It's value this way and a value to us as a member of the state. We've raised our standards, knowing that in a global economy, classes had to be more rigorous. And you rose to the challenge. Math scores are up, reading scores are up, and Missouri's high school graduation rate is in the top 10 in the nation. In fact, new data from the U.S. Department of Education show that Missouri's high school graduation rate has increased 5 percentage points since the 2010-2011 school year. That's the 5th largest increase in the nation. Secretary of Education Arnie Duncan called me personally to deliver the good news, and that is great testament to your outstanding efforts and the high standards we continue to set. Not only are more Missouri students finishing high school and going on to college, once they're on campus, they're doing better. Last year's class of college freshmen who graduated from one of Missouri's public high schools had the lowest rates of enrollment in remedial math and English courses in the past 5 years. Okay, really important. We're continue to talk about that, and I appreciate at the ground level the work you, your instructors, and your school districts are doing in that area. A recent report by the Lumina Foundation showed that Missouri increased the number of adults with a college degree by a full percentage point in just 1 year, significantly outpacing the national average. Friends, that's thousands more Missourians graduating from college, finding better jobs, and building lives of financial independence for them and their families. And it's also a point I've been making for a lot of years. When I became governor, we had about 750,000 people in our state who had college hours but not a college degree and weren't in school. And we have targeted with a lot of strategies, Western Governors University, online courses at our public's two-year schools, more adult education all across the place. We are really working, our Department of Economic Development and its workforce dollars, moving hard in these areas. Because quite frankly, we all know education is the best economic development tool there is, and for folks that are partway there, getting them all the way there on a degree or a certification is essential. And as was mentioned before, the budget I signed this spring will help build on this progress with record funding for our K-12 classrooms. We'll continue to, as dollars become available, as the economy keeps moving forward, invest in that best economic development tool. Now, guided by our shared belief that all children deserve an equal opportunity to succeed, the progress we're making is significant, but so are the challenges we face. And quite frankly, the 6 points I just made about how things are getting better, I probably ought to make them twice because you probably won't have the opportunity to read about any of them in the newspaper or hear anybody about the news, any news reports about them. And that's why these days when we talk about, raising standards, increasing graduation rates, being one of the leading states in the country in that, going to college, completing college, fewer remedial classes, fewer adults that don't have degrees, additional resources. Those put us, and I'm not here to talk about other states. I'm not Rick Perry. I don't fly around the country and say bad things about states as if that's some sort of policy, okay? But I will tell you, where we are and where we're headed stands in stark contrast to many of other states in this country. And if you don't have to look very far in this state, look east or look west. In west, they had to pass the large tax increase just so they could cut education. And east, they can't even get a budget, okay? And who knows what's going to happen over there. The biggest problem I had this year was somebody thought was that the budget got passed too early. I'm like, I don't really consider that a big problem. If they want to get it done in January, that's fine with me. You know, let's just get this thing going. Anyway, but guided by our shared belief that all children deserve an equal opportunity to succeed, this progress we're making is significant, real, and measurable. And it's important that we talk about it. Because I'm not criticizing the press how they cover this. I mean, news is contention. That's what you write about. That's what you cover. I understand that. We all understand that, and I can provide it for them when they need it. Have done a good job of that over the years, of making sure that I inject a little contention in things. But these days, there's a lot more communication going on between you and your teachers, between your teachers and their families, between their families and their friends, through a lot of other methods than waiting for the paper to hit the front of the door in the morning, or waiting to all sit down and watch Walter Cronkite, or not even Brian Williams, I guess, on evening news. So communicating good things that are happening. We had a presentation from a management consultant at the National Governors Association who said it doesn't do you any good to succeed if no one knows you are. So I just say that to all of you. When you have good things happen, make sure you're communicating that inside your departments. When you see objective signs like these of solid progress that's happening, don't think everybody else knows it, because guess what? Not everybody else is thinking about these things, and we all have a responsibility to communicate them. And when we see solid, deliverable, measurable results, please communicate those in your communities as we reacquaint ourselves in a deep, deep way with the value and a value of public education. So, we also face a lot of challenges. Let's not kid ourselves. It's a fight on at least two fronts. A rapidly changing global economy demands an even greater commitment to excellence at all levels. That means higher standards, higher test scores, more technology, more hands-on learning. It's going to take all of us. And at the same time that we need to be focused on raising our game and giving our students the tools they'll need to compete, well-funded special interests have intensified their all-out assault on the very foundations of public education in our state. We saw it again this past legislative session with the so-called transfer fix. What started out as a reasonable bipartisan effort to address the challenges facing two districts in challenge in the St. Louis region and a number of others that were involved in that, ended up once again just going off the rails. House Bill 42 failed to solve the problems it was intended to solve in the St. Louis region. And as the session wore on, the more and more it became a vehicle for dangerous experimentation that would have impacted school districts all across our state. What started out as a relatively narrow bill to solve a challenge, but a relatively narrow one, ended up jumping into Kansas City and Columbia and Springfield with a whole list of experimentation and radical ideas that aren't what we need to do to keep making the progress I started this speech with. And so this bill would have eroded pillars of our public schools with a thinly disguised voucher scheme funneling public dollars to private education. Folks, I got 19 more months at this, but I'm going to keep saying it, and I think it's a value that Missourians deeply share with me. Public dollars should be used for public education, not private education. I mean, it's behind this effort are the same special interests that have succeeded in passing hundreds of millions of dollars in tax cuts at the expense of our schools, undermining local control and sending not just this one, but two voucher bills to my desk. And it's important to note, at least to me, but to everybody, I think, in our state, I vetoed them both. That's why I hope you'll join me again in assisting sustaining of my veto of House Bill 42 and send a clear and resounding message that public education is a value that should be strengthened, not experimented with. And that's all on the basis of all of us work every day to improve it. When we say strengthen, you are not standing still. There's no one who has taken their summer time to come sit at this conference or do your staff meetings or be in your classrooms so that you can maintain where you are. Everyone here is trying to get better. And we just got to communicate that to our communities and to our state, that we're competing out there. I don't see anybody here afraid to compete. And when I see you in your districts and get the chance, and the First Lady and I get a chance to visit, which we do, and we try to, and we will continue to, it is exciting to see the self-critiques. You all are tough on each other, I'll tell you that, and you're tough on yourselves. And that's how we get better. But twice the legislature has tried to fix the issue of student transfers, and twice they failed. That's why when we saw the bill go in the wrong direction this year, at 42, we got to work. Because issues did exist, because you all know that the law that was passed that deals with the transfer issue for unaccredited districts was a clunky addition to a 1992 bill that passed. It was not designed for the purpose with which it's being used. So we have had to use a little policy duct tape, shall we say, to kind of wedge it in there anyway. But I am proud to say that when the legislature wasn't able for the second year to fix it because of the significant and real problems in 42, that the superintendents in the St. Louis region are stepping up, taking this challenge head on. Last month, I announced a historic commitment by St. Louis area superintendents and Margie and her team to provide a range of resources aimed at improving student achievement and educational opportunities while helping Normandy and Riverview implement their plans to regain accreditation from the Board of Education. And I should note, saving those communities. Okay, we're not giving up on Riverview Gardens. We're not giving up on Florissant Ferguson. We're not giving up on Normandy. Okay, we're going to get right on in there and make it work. It'd just be like if your communities. How would your community survive if they said, oh, okay, we're going to survive, but we're not going to have a school? That's not really a community, okay? The battle here is to make sure that we're saving communities for kids and for the economy all over our great state. The agreement we're in sets out real, tangible steps that school districts across the region will take now and in the near future to put these struggling schools on a path to long-term academic success and financial stability. In addition, I'm providing $1 million in state funds for intensive reading instruction for students in Normandy and Riverview Gardens. Friends, in the depth and breadth of this new collaborative effort, taken in the best interest of all the region's children, is quite frankly unprecedented and sets high goals for excellence. This is not a collaborative designed to merely save these schools or get them to the lowest bar of accreditation. Okay, or get them just sliding over the hurdles. They're working hard to implement excellence. They're setting the standards high. But to sit around a table with 23 superintendents, all who have a more than full-time job, who have committed their personal time, their staff's personal time, their teachers' personal time, to go into those districts and to adopt and to work with schools and teachers and systems is incredible, and it's going to work, okay? You can just see it and feel it. It's going to take time, though. You don't walk in and snap your fingers and challenges get solved. But high goals, high expectations. It's tremendously encouraging to see the spirit of regionalism flourishing at such a critical time for St. Louis and for public education. I greatly, personally, and professionally appreciate those superintendents and Don Senti and folks at Education Plus for the incredible amount of time, energy, and effort they're spending. And all I'd ask is if any of those superintendents ask you all for some help on something in this thing, reach out to them. Because let's fix this, let's solve this, let's do it ourselves, and then let's talk about it. But it won't be one day, but it's going to work. Now, there's another important bill I want to talk to you about today, and that's Senate Bill 224. Switching subject for just a second. Public education has always been the front door to the American dream. And as public educators, you've answered a call to make sure that door is open to every child, no matter what they look like, what their abilities are, or where they're from. It's what we do. It's who we are. And it's what made this nation of immigrants the envy of the world and the most prosperous country on earth. We have been the place that has welcomed the world, all of us. I mean, I was in Europe this year. Kind of makes you realize we were a colony not all that long ago. And all of us have roots that go back to various countries and ethnicities and parts of the world that are, I say to folks, I'm about as American as you can be since the first Jeremiah Nixon came across and landed in Philadelphia in 1689. So my folks were here before the Revolution. For those of you wondering about the Nixon ties, I used to get asked why I was related to Richard Nixon. They split Quaker communities in Pennsylvania at the Revolutionary War. They literally took votes in the Quaker as to who was going to fight in the Revolution and who was not. This side of the Nixon, we were the fighting Quakers, okay? Which kind of was the reason why we had to go on to New Orleans after that. But we found life a little more hospitable to our lifestyle. But even though I can carry it back to them, we came from England. My mother's people came from Norway, Sweden regions. And you can still see it in the bloodlines of our kids. And one of my sons that doesn't mind the cold and one of them that likes it hot, you know, whatever. That's what America is. And as we look towards an economy of the future, that's the kind of America we need to embrace, not dividing people, not being afraid of it. That's why we should all be troubled by Senate Bill 224, which would revoke the A-plus scholarships earned by students on what's called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA status, okay? These students who came to the United States as children have now lived in Missouri for at least 8 years and have met every standard for the A-plus scholarship. They've attended a public Missouri high school for at least 3 years. They've showed up to school 95% of the time. They've done those 50 hours of community service or mentoring. They're good kids. They've worked hard. They've played by the rules. They've given back to their communities. And in their current state law, they're eligible for those A-plus scholarships. They've earned at least a 2.5 GPA. They've maintained that attendance rate. They're students like Anna Hernandez and Juan Sanchez, who were profiled by the Kansas City Star over the weekend. Anna came to the United States as a young child and as a student, and she's excelled. She graduated from Bishop Ward High School with a 4.0 GPA. She's a Kaufman Scholar. Juan is another high achiever. He was brought to the U.S. by his undocumented parents when he was 2 years old and recently graduated with honors from community college. Now, these are ones that have moved on up, but as we sit here right now, when school starts this year, and these kids that got those scholarships are on our community college campuses, paid for by our A-plus program, if I'm overridden, that scholarship goes away. And all the work that you have done, and all the work that they have done, the signal from us and from America is, oh yeah, sign up for this A-plus thing, work hard, help other students, get good grades, show up to school. If you do that, we'll give you a scholarship if you take community college option. And then, oh, by the way, later on, we'll take that away from you. That is not living up to the promise that you all made to those students in your schools. It's not the better part of what we should be as Missourians. Taking away for the scholarships to these students that have already earned through years of academic achievement and community service is wrong. It's not who we are, and it shouldn't become law. Rewarding good kids who study hard and give back in their communities is something we can all agree on, and we can all, you know something else we can agree on? These kids didn't have it that easy, okay? Come over here with undocumented parents when you're 2 years old? That ain't exactly waking up on third base with the silver spoon in your mouth, okay? They've worked. We need to, so in September, let's stand on behalf of our values, the kids in the community, and I ask for everybody's help to help me sustain the veto of this bill. I mean, once again, I want to send a signal to the world that if people come to our country and they're here, as the DACA students are, in a legally recognized status, and they're in your schools, and they excel, and they want to go on and improve themselves with higher education, we want them here, whatever country they're from. Okay. Now, we're at a few inflection points in this country, folks, and this is one of them. It's going to be talked about in a presidential race. It's going to get talked about all over the place. And it's real easy to demagogue on these issues. But we give you a responsibility in dealing with these kids, not a responsibility of demagogue, but a responsibility to look them in the eye and make sure they work hard, and if they don't get a B, to give them a C. And if they don't do the work, to flunk them. And if they get an A, they get an A. And if you make a promise to them, we ought to live up to that promise. That's part of what we are as Americans. Now, one other item. I think we've got some challenges in Jefferson City now, okay? If we really want to change the culture in Jefferson City, a culture that was described just this past week as reckless, disturbing, disgraceful, then we should get serious about the fundamental problems that grow into the challenges we've seen. While there are a great many dedicated, well-meaning public servants in the legislature, this past session highlighted some serious and long-running problems in the Missouri General Assembly. Issues that affect the public policies that the legislature pursues and the people that work there and the students that come there during college. We've seen how the more time legislators spend in the Capitol, the more influence the lobbyists and special interests exert, and the less of the people's business that actually gets done. That's why I talked about 42 in the way I did. That bill was going okay there for a long while. I mean, one could argue, well, I'm not here to argue. But in the process, let's not kid ourselves, some legislators forgot what they've been elected to do and who they're supposed to represent. That's why you'll hear me talk more about the need to shorten the legislative session. I mean, we all talk about this stuff, but everybody here says, yeah, the first half of the legislative session, don't worry about it. Gets in the last few weeks, we'll start getting interested. Well, how about we just shorten it? How about we make them interested the whole time? Which part of the school year doesn't count for y'all? Do you guys say the first semester you can just mess around and we won't worry about that? We'll make it up there in the last 2 weeks of the second semester and that'll take care of school this year? I mean, I've served in the legislature. The first half is not that productive, okay? And they got plenty of time for meetings all the time. I think we ought to shorten the legislative session. Let's give them enough time to get their work done, but then get them back to their communities. Because the strength of having a system like ours in Missouri with a lot of representatives and a lot of senators relative to most states is that the people that are elected are actually members of their community, not members of the capital community. That the voices you should hear in that democracy are voices from Winona and Wentzville and West Plains and Kansas City and St. Louis, not from, pick a evening locale in Jeff City. Have voices from that aren't quite as true, shall we say, to the reflections of their communities. And while we're at it, we should restore limits on campaign contributions. Having unlimited contributions. I mean, I'm not. We should cap gifts from lobbyists. We should close the revolving door between legislating and lobbying. We should. I mean, we're Missouri, okay? When we are the Wild West of ethics laws with no campaign limits and no lobbyist limits and all this sort of stuff, that doesn't reflect who we are as a state. We're a conservative state. And it's about time we stood up and said, okay, let's have ethics laws and campaign laws that reflect our state. I mean, and to think that none of that stuff has any effect on what goes on, I mean, you can see it. In the coming months, you're going to hear me talk a lot more about these problems and work with legislators to craft solutions, which I've done on a myriad of things. Very proud of the bipartisan. I think quite frankly, my bipartisan work is as good as any politician in this country. So I'm committed to working with folks to get solutions to these problems, and I will. But when you have the last couple of months that we've seen, it is not time to just sweep this stuff under the rug and say, let's ignore this and we'll come back next year and just do the same thing over again and expect something different to happen. Let's have laws that reflect the people of the state, and that includes in the area of ethics. It just does. Now, in conclusion, after that slight diversion from education policy, although it affects it, guys, I mean, it does. It doesn't get you a clean read in a democracy. And that's what you really want. You want you want it to reflect the communities and then be a step or two ahead, is what you want in a democracy. You want to elect leaders that understand their communities and make decisions based on being able to go back to their communities and explain how everybody needs to get a little bit better. You know? And when you have unlimited contributions and no limit on gifts and all this other culture develop, it just skews things. It takes everybody's eyes off the prize. And the prize is getting as much done as we can in the small time the good Lord gives us in the important positions all of us are in. And I think this is the year to make some progress in that area. So, in conclusion, I see a collective. Oh, finally, okay. I really look forward to it. This is one of those in my world. I look out here and I see. I don't really see individuals. What I see when I look at y'all is a committed group of professionals. But secondly, I see through you, and I just remember time after time after time your school districts I've been in, and the bright faces of those kids, and the commitment of those harried teachers. And the desire to make things better. It's just wonderful to see. It's inspiring. So I want to thank you for having me and for your enduring commitments to the bedrock values we share. Once again, I mean, these values are an important thing to talk about. Because when you hear me talk in political terms, not necessarily partisan terms, but political terms, you don't hear me say the word compromise. Instead, I say cooperate. And I'm not trying to be syllogistic or simplistic here, but compromise would indicate that you're asking somebody to back up from their values, to compromise something. I just want folks to cooperate. And if they cooperate, we'll get to a place where they can collaborate and work together to move things forward. So, a commitment to our bedrock values, the belief that all children deserve the opportunity to live up to their God-given potential. You would not be in education if that wasn't a value you had. The public schools are the heart and soul and reflect our community better than any other institution that the government is involved in. And that those who take on the honorable challenge of teaching our kids deserve the respect, gratitude, and compensation worthy of their commitment. The people in this room today make me more optimistic than ever about our ability to build a stronger, brighter, and more prosperous future for all Missouri children. I'll finish this where I started it. Thank you.